Pro 14 rugby tonight. The sun on the backs of the Munster players have been said that for a little while. They've already got one win, which is great for them, and it's a really big game against Cheetahs. It's at 6:35 this evening, because if Cheetahs win, they can go above Munster in that conference. The potential being that if Munster finish third in that Pro 14 conference, they could end up having an extra game before a potential Champions Cup final, which is not what they would want, because they would end up having to play that extra playoff match in the Pro 14. So as much as they would like to rest their key men ahead of the visit to Bordeaux to take on Racing 92 next weekend, this is a game they have to win.
Yeah, for sure. They don't have to win it. They can play Ulster and beat Ulster at home in the last game. Cheetahs are 6 points behind them in the league. So if they win with a bonus point tonight, Cheetahs against Munster, they go 1 point behind. They play the Kings next week, which I think they've been very, very powerful. So they could go ahead of them for sure. Munster finished third in that conference, then you're away in that quarter-final scenario. So they need one more win to guarantee that home quarter-final in Thomond Park, which is massive for them. Will they get it tonight? They've mixed and matched, changed the team a little bit. Conor Murray's on the bench, Peter O'Mahony's back. Stander played last week. There's no Keatley, he played last week. So the team that finishes tonight won't be the exact team that will start. There's talks that Keith Earls might come back. And one question I've been asked all week is it a disruption for Munster being away for the 2 weeks and having to travel to France again next week? You could say that a little bit, but I think having the squad together for 2 weeks together away, it's effectively a mini kind of pre-season
training camp, bonding in the sunshine. I would have thought it's the perfect preparation for this huge game.
With respect to the Pro 14, I think the coaches will probably be working over. They get their detail for last week against the Kings and this week against Cheetahs presented to the players, but they'll be working overtime looking at Racing for next week and that big game in the quarterfinals.
From a coaching perspective, Alan, it's invaluable, those camps, bringing the players together and having them really 24/7 in terms of the work. Not so much on the training
morale, doesn't it?
Yeah, but even off the training pitch in terms of working with the different units, individual players around the hotel.
Coaches will not be sleeping much there, because you're thinking the game last week and this week they'll be focused. Obviously, you've got to not let on to the players that our minds are drifting forward, but the coaches will probably be doing a massive amount of work, watching the Racing games and the build up to that. I think the most important thing for Munster tonight is, even if they don't get the win, is they get out of there unscathed. They can't afford to get any more injuries. They're playing at altitude. They're going to be physically tested. The Cheetahs are very strong at home, and they want to get on that plane tomorrow, 12, 14, 15-hour journey home, whatever, with the stopover.
Alan, can you really do that in rugby? Look, we're talking to Johnny. Obviously, we haven't got a background in rugby, but when you talk about come out of a game unscathed, playing football, you could actually do that. You could make a conscious decision in terms of really throwing yourself into the tackle, just staying away from things a little bit, playing almost within yourself, not putting yourself out there so much. When I look at the rugby, it's almost impossible for me. And looking at it, to put yourself.
You know how you get injured, Kenny, in rugby?
Exactly.
He's been half-hearted.
Yeah.
So they've got to make sure that the players are fully focused on tonight, that they're 100%, because the South African teams are very physical, and this Cheetahs team have been strong at home. They have a few Springboks in the team that they've got back in the last couple of weeks. So they've got to go 100%, play hard, and just hope after the game.
Well, I'm sure you'll see the bench being emptied very early, no matter how the game is going.
Yeah, for sure.
You won't see Conor Murray, for example, competing anything
Marshall
close to 80 minutes.
Kilcoyne, Archer, O'Callaghan, the whole bench will be emptied. Keatley's on the bench, Scannell, Murray. Those three backs will start next week. How much game time does he bring him on for the last 15, 20 minutes? I don't think Conor Murray needs games.
Ideally, you don't see Murray at all tonight.
I would say maybe not, if possible. I think he's probably the most important player to Munster next week, going to Racing. We saw last year when he missed that semi-final against Saracens. But for me, get out of there unscathed, get the recovery done, get on the plane, get home. And luckily enough, the game is until Sunday week, so they can get back home on this Sunday, and they've 7 days before the game when they're back in Ireland. But it's important that, like we say, hopefully they get a little bit of luck as regards the injuries, and maybe benefited from Keith Earls maybe back next week, which would be massive for them.
You have Glasgow Connacht next in terms of what you want to talk about this morning. Now, I mean, Connacht, they're, it's a 1 in a million chance they're going to end up in Champions Cup rugby next season. They are up against a Glasgow team that need to win as well to make sure that they get that bye into the Pro 14 semi-finals. It's just been a disaster season all round. Same excuses week in, week out. Same old failings cost them a place in the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup. Connacht fans just want the season to be over.
Yeah,
so they
it's
can
been
consign
really
it to
poor,
history bank and get out of there.
And Kieran Keane coming in as coach, you know, there was a lot of optimism, the changeover from Pat Lam. They played 19, lost 13. It's a really poor return. Slight chance of making the playoffs to qualify for Europe.
But they need to make up ground on Ospreys.
Ospreys, and,
who are
they're 6 points behind
one
Ospreys.
win away from making sure that can't
They're
happen.
on 34 points. Ospreys are on 40. Even if they get maximum points, two bonus point wins, that will bring them to 44. They need Ospreys to lose tonight. But the problem is Ospreys play Zebra next week, and you think they'll get maximum points there. So
play Leinster as well in their last game, Connacht.
yeah, and it's kind of a bit of a silver lining if you're with your goals trying to get into Europe. Connacht have been there before. It's massive in the sports ground. Winning the Pro 14, the old Pro 12 a couple of years ago was huge. So they've gone backwards, and they've been really inconsistent this year. And it doesn't get any easier going to Glasgow tonight.
No, Ulster Ospreys. It's a massive game for so many reasons. There's probably we've already referenced it a couple of times, there's probably going to be some protests and demonstrations of some sort outside the stadium on the way in on the back of the Paddy Jackson and Stuart Olding rape trial, and all the discussion as to whether or not they should be reintroduced to the Ulster squad and by extension to the Ireland squad maybe at a later date. And we haven't got the review back from Ulster Rugby and the IRFU as yet, but that's going to run and run. There is still a rugby match to be played, and it's a game that Ulster absolutely have to win, because they have to haul Edinburgh back in. And while they do have a game in hand, they probably need to be foot perfect between now and the end of the season, Ulster. And not playing Champions Cup rugby next season would be a disaster for a club whose attendance is down about 3,000 on average per game this season. You would imagine that will only be dented further on the back of what's happened off the pitch in recent months, and a Challenge Cup season, which, in all due respect to that competition, nobody wants to be involved in.
It's been a disastrous season for Ulster, on and off the field. You don't want to be getting into too many permutations and confusing people, but they lie fourth in Conference B. They're 8 points behind Edinburgh. That win last week was massive. It gave them a chance of maybe making the playoffs. They have a game in hand. So that game tonight, I think they need to get maximum points and bring themselves to 56. Then they're 3 behind Edinburgh, and you know they hope that maybe Edinburgh lose a game or two, and it's doable. But it's been really, really poor. You think Les Kiss leaving, then John O'Gibbs is going at the end of the season, and they haven't been, 2014 since they've been in the knockout stages of Europe. There's a lot of promises and big statements, particularly in 2010 from their CEO Shane Logan, saying that they were going to be, their goal was to be one of the top clubs in Europe.
Top of the pile in Ireland,
and you know, Dave,
I've
played so many times up in the old Ravenhill and the Kingspan, and the Ulster people are unbelievably passionate, and there's a demand and maybe a similar expectation when Munster weren't making the knockout stages in the last couple of years. They've great fans, and there's a feeling that they've been perennial underachievers. I think it's a fact. They haven't won a trophy since 2006, and in that time you think Ospreys have won the Pro 14, Pro 12, 4 times, 3 or 4 times. Glasgow,
Scarlets.
Connacht, Scarlets. And you think, why haven't Ulster done that in 12 years?
But has the squad been good enough? And that's
They've made a lot
an
of
easy thing to
mistakes,
say, isn't it?
They've made a lot of mistakes with the recruitment. There's something not right, the feel-good factor in the group, and team spirit, the bond, there's something not right.
That's a management
club.
that's a management responsibility, really, in terms of
they've
the
got
level,
it.
the
The
type of
problems are
environment
deep-rooted, really,
off
aren't
the
they?
field. They've got it
Even
wrong.
go back to 2012, Kenny. They get to a European Cup final in brilliant style. They go down to Munster, win a quarter final. They win at the Aviva Stadium against Edinburgh in the semi-final, and they sack the coach. Brian McLaughlin loses his job at the end of
and
that
he's
season.
homegrown guy. They've lost their identity a little bit, and it's all kind of unravelled there, and it's not right, and they've got to fix this. But I think first and foremost, in the short term, they've got to win these last couple of matches.
Have to be playing Champions Cup rugby.
And at least then get into the playoffs in Europe. Make sure you're in Europe next year as well. You qualify for next year's, but get into the playoffs in the Pro 14. And you never know, like Ulster, they'd be tricky in the knockout stages.
They'd still be the plum draw right now.
Yeah,
Everyone
but
would
they'd be
fancy
tricky.
crack
They
off
would,
down to
but they'd be
the
tricky
knockout
and
stages.
they're capable.
Before you go, quick word on Leinster. Leinster need a couple of wins just to make sure that they top their conference and they have a bye week heading into the semi-finals. They need to mind themselves as well with the Scarlets en route on Saturday. That game's live and exclusive next weekend at the Aviva Stadium, and off the ball, Leinster Scarlets in the Champions Cup semi-final. Tomorrow evening, 7:35, you expect them to win, lock down that top spot in the next week or two. Everything. They could have everything they ever dreamt of between now and the end of the season, or they could end up with nothing.
Yeah, well, a bonus point win will almost secure them that home spot in the semi-final. One less game. It's been all good news for them, really. You know, I know they've had a few injuries, losing Van der Fleer and Henshaw. There's talks he may be back. It could be a miraculous recovery.
O'Brien back tomorrow night.
O'Brien back is massive, because I think, you know, everyone has felt his pain. He's had so many bloody injuries this year again, disappointments. The comeback a few weeks ago against Scarlets, he gets the stinger in the shoulder. So look, hopefully he can get back on track. He's clear to play tomorrow night. Luke McGrath may be available for that Scarlets match next week, which would be massive for him as well. So you'd imagine Leinster will be way too powerful. And is there an A team, a B team there? You know,
C team.
A C team. We could start looking at a C team. There's so many players there. Kenny Cunningham might even get a run with Leinster at this stage. They're
Tricky winger.
tricky
Keep me on the
winger.
wing. Keep me on the wing.
On the
But
wing.
look, powerful, and it's been
full
all
back.
positive. You know, and they're in good shape going into next week.